On January 3, 2020, US President Donald Trump, in an extreme measure, assassinated one of the most powerful men in Shia Islam. General Qasem Soleimani was killed when a US Air Force service member in Nevada ordered an American MQ-9 Reaper drone that took off from a US base in Qatar to fire 2 missiles at the envoy carrying the general. This was a major counterintelligence and security failure on the part of the Islamic Republic. The general is said to have traveled from Syria to Iraq on a passenger plane, which could even be tracked on aviation websites. Interestingly, in 2018, the Iranian general and Trump fought each other with Game of Thrones memes. Soleimani first posted an edited image from the movie Olympus Has Fallen to his Instagram that showed him standing in front of an exploding White House. After Trump withdrew from the 3-year-old nuclear deal with Iran, the president tweeted a Game of Thrones meme of himself that said, "Sanctions are coming." The next day, Soleimani posted a similar Game of Thrones meme of himself on Instagram that said, "I will stand against you." Unfortunately for Iran, such overconfidence led to the successful assassination of the general. In the aftermath of the attack, tens of thousands packed the streets of the Iranian cities of Ahvaz and Mashhad to pay tribute to Soleimani and incited the fears of a World War III around the world. Iran promised retaliation and soon launched a series of missile attacks on 2 Iraqi bases housing US troops. Most missiles seem to have hit the target, but President Trump, in a surprising U-turn, denied any casualties and promised more sanctions on Iran. The events leading to this deadly attack are also quite intriguing and show an interesting side of international politics. Iran officially became the Islamic Republic on April 1, 1979, when Iranians overwhelmingly approved a national referendum to make it so. This means the constitution should be compatible with Islamic law. Today, Twelver Shia Islam is the official state religion, to which about 90% to 95% of the population adheres. Iran is one of the world's oldest continuous civilizations, with settlements dating back to BC 4000. Ali Husseini Khamenei, the highest-ranking Islamic cleric in Shia Islam, is the supreme leader of the country, which means he has the final say in all matters ranging from economy to foreign policy and everything else in the country. Broadly speaking, the Islamic world is split into 2 major factions, the Sunni Muslims and the Shia Muslims. Sunni Muslims include 85% of all Muslims, whereas Shia Muslims comprise 15% of all Muslims. This division dates back to the years immediately after the Prophet Muhammad's death. Sunni Shia sectarianism is indeed tearing apart the Middle East, but is largely driven by the very modern and very political rivalry between Iran and Saudi Arabia. This divide, also called the Sunni-Shia divide, manifests itself as the Sunni-majority Saudi Arabia and Shia-majority Iran constantly battle for both religious and political supremacy. However, Iran and Saudi Arabia have never involved in direct conflict with each other. Instead, they try to gain influence by fighting proxy wars in the region. The concept of a proxy war is simple. In a proxy war, opposite sides use third parties or countries as substitutes for fighting each other directly. The warring parties will often be funded, armed or even advised by the external forces. For example, in Yemen, Iran supports the Houthi, a Shia Islamic political and armed movement, whereas Saudi Arabia provides military support to the pro-Saudi president of Yemen, Abdrabbuh Mansur Hadi. The same war is being fought in Lebanon, Palestinian Syria, Iraq and elsewhere. This makes the Middle East one of the most volatile and polarized regions in the world. The Middle East has about 3.4% of the Earth's land surface, but they possess 48% of the world's known oil reserves and 38% of natural gas reserves. However, these resources have frequently been regarded as more of a curse than a blessing. Western firms had for decades controlled the region's oil wealth, whether Arabian American Oil Company, now known as Saudi Aramco in Saudi Arabia, or the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company in Iran. The British government gained direct control of the Iranian oil industry using the London-based oil company. When the British came under intense pressure to share oil revenues evenly with Iran, London adamantly refused. As a result, amid great popular acclaim in 1951, Mohammad Mossadegh, the then beloved Prime Minister of Iran, nationalized Iran's oil industry and denied the British any further involvement in Iran's oil industry, thereby destroying a pillar of Britain's economy. Infuriated, the British conspired with US intelligence services, overthrew Mossadegh and restored the monarchy under the Western-friendly Shah, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. Unfortunately for the British, the revenues from the oil industry never came back. The US, however, found a buyer for their weapons. Iran under Shah soon became the biggest importer of weapons from the US, even superseding NATO. The Shah, now with enormous oil wealth, tried to modernize the nation and took a series of politically inept decisions. In 1963, the Shah launched his White Revolution, a broad government program that included land reform, infrastructure development, voting rights for women, and the reduction of illiteracy. Although these programs were applauded by many in Iran, Islamic leaders were critical of what they saw as the westernization of Iran. Over time, religious discontent grew, and one Shia cleric, Ruhollah Khomeini, was able to incite a major revolution that eventually helped overthrow the Shah. The theocratic structure we see today in Iran, developed by Khomeini, is a mix of Western and Islamic ideas in the form of an Islamic republic. Present-day Islamic Republic under Khomeini is no more an ally to the Western world. It does not let the West exploit its resources, is no more an importer of weapons. On the other hand, its Sunni-majority archenemy, Saudi Arabia, is one of America's strong strategic ally. Interestingly, now Saudi Arabia is the biggest importer of arms from the United States. For the last 40 years, Iran has been a persistent and implacable foe to the US. Washington has, since Iran's Islamic Revolution in 1979, consistently portrayed the country as a purely hostile and dangerous actor. Most of the current situation revolves around Iran's nuclear program. Since we humans have invented nuclear weapons, the risk of proliferation of these weapons is a real threat to the entire world, especially in the context of an authoritarian state. Trying to manufacture these weapons attracts sanctions from around the world, and these diplomatic measures prove effective in avoiding nuclear proliferation. To stop Iran from manufacturing a nuclear weapon, the Obama administration in July 2015 signed the Iran nuclear deal. It imposed restrictions on Iran's civilian nuclear enrichment program in return for the lifting of sanctions. China, France, Russia, the United Kingdom, and the United States negotiated the agreement alongside Germany. The best evidence we have suggests Iran was complying with the deal. Iran has dismantled a huge portion of its nuclear program and given international inspectors wide latitude to make sure it isn't cheating. The country is significantly further from a nuclear weapon than it was when the deal came into force. Trump in 2018 pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal as a part of fulfilling his election campaign promise. He termed the deal defective at its core. This was a major setback to the non-proliferation efforts made by various countries. Trump also started a campaign he called the Maximum Pressure Campaign to strangle the Iranian economy, which also restricts its oil imports and puts back the sanctions. Tehran, on the other hand, has always stated that if it is prevented from selling its oil, so will others be. Therefore, Iran responded by heightening tensions, attacking several oil tankers traversing the Persian Gulf, shooting down a US drone, and striking an oil facility in Abqaiq, Saudi Arabia. 21% of global petroleum liquids pass through the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow shipping route in the Gulf region. At its narrowest point, the strait and its shipping lanes lie entirely within Iran's territorial waters and make it very easy for Iran to attack the shipments blocking the supply of fuel. These deterrence and leverage tactics demonstrate that Iran can wreak significant damage to Western interests without directly confronting the superpower. By killing the general, Donald Trump has inflated the hostility between the two nations to cartoonish proportions. It sent fears of world war around the globe. Soon after the attack, the US sent nearly 3,000 more army troops to the Middle East as reinforcements, and Trump threatened to target 52 of the cultural sites of Iran in case it retaliated. As the world braced itself for Iran to strike back, Iran fired 22 missiles at US military bases in Iraq. The same day, Iran mistook a civilian plane for a hostile target and shot it down. Most casualties were Iranians. Demonstrations followed soon after, and protesters demanded that their supreme leader step down. This fiasco highlights why a state like Iran should never acquire nuclear weapons and how an erratic decision of a leader can harm global peace and harmony.